Okay, so I've quit going to the counselor. I don't bother telling anybody that I quit. They just kind of finally found out about it, and enough time had passed. I guess I didn't get harassed too much about it. Maybe people saw that it wasn't doing any good anyway. Um, my wife has either had my son or he's on the way. I can't remember exactly what the time frame, but it doesn't matter. I wanted to bring this up as another insult to my wife. When she got pregnant the first time, which was only 9 months after we got married, um, she reached almost 180 pounds. So that was huge. And the whole time, she used the excuse she was eating for two. She didn't care. She was just using any excuse to, and she loved the attention, especially from her mother and her father as well, but mainly her mother. My parents didn't give her much attention, but that's the way they are. They could have done better. So she gets close. When she finally has Jennifer, she's around 180 pounds. Then 9 months after she has Jennifer, she's pregnant again with Sarah. Not quite, just a little bit longer than that, but it was about that. And she gets to almost 190. She's just tapping right on the door for 190. After she has Sarah, 9 months later, not quite again, but close enough for me to make this joke at the end. She gets pregnant again. And I said, all right. I said, are we going to break the 200-pound mark this time? not, not a smart thing to say, but it was irritating me that she was as careless as she was with her health. Um, and I mean, it was showing when after she was pregnant. It was showing, and that was disappointing to me. So anyway, she didn't hit the 200 mark, and in fact, she was bedridden for a while with Joseph and things like that. And but after she had Joseph, which the first two I didn't have to watch the cesarean, the C-section, but the third one wasn't at the same hospital. It was down in Baltimore. Much better hospital, I will say. But the doctor, who was the same one, he says, well, now you can come in. And I didn't know what to say, but I ended up having to go in. I can remember just a few things because I kind of tried to stay behind the curtain. I didn't want to see him cutting her open. I was very squeamish still. I hadn't gotten into hunting deer yet, so I really didn't like seeing any blood or anything like that. And but here's what I remember. I peeked over the curtain once, and I could see that he had the skin laid back, and you could see the fat underneath of the skin. That was gross. The next thing I can remember seeing is him working my son out, and at that point he didn't really look like a human. Um, and I remember that as they were holding him, one of the nurses was holding him, he pissed straight up in the air, right? So I can remember that. I also remember that they didn't do the spinal or whatever they call it properly. And what they really amounted to is after they gave her the shot in the spine, they didn't lay her on her back quick enough. And so she was not 100% numb like she should have been. Um, I think they put her to sleep after Joe was born. She got to see him. So to stitch her back up because of that. I also remember there they like to get you up out of bed right away. I mean, almost right away because you healed faster that way. I also remember that they said by taking your pain medication you healed faster because you weren't all tense from the pain. So there's a little bit of advice for any women getting a C-section and any husband who thinks that they should tough it out. Well, I'm not so sure it's as good an idea as you think. Um, so we had all three of our children, and in fact, at the same time, she got her tubes tied, which she asked if I wanted another one. I said, no, I really was satisfied with two. Now, after having my son, I'm not sorry at all. I'm glad that we didn't stop with two. So I've done my part for um, replenishing the human supply of people. And so now we have the three children, and they are quite interesting to say the least. At one point, I mentioned that uh, our house was heated by a single register. Just this one, like 3 foot by 3 foot hole with a cast iron grate over top of it. And all the heat came up through there. You could actually see the heat exchanger down inside and all. Well, I'm not sure why, but one day my son is standing over the heater with no clothes on. Maybe he peed himself. Maybe that's what it was. And my wife had taken his clothes off to throw them in the wash, and so he was standing there naked over top of the register looking up at the TV, probably the afternoon dirty shows, and he shits right down on top of the heat exchanger, which of course was on or was turning on. And so I believe she called me to come up from the shop because I had to take the screws out, pull the off, and clean the shit off of the top of the heat exchanger, which of course stunk like hell because it was burning. So that's some of the excitement with that register. Another thing is one day the two girls decided they were going to stuff Kleenex down through the holes. Now, this was very poor timing on their parts because the heater came on. And again, the it actually caught the tissue on fire. So now that it's burning and the fan is blowing, it's blowing those pieces of paper tissue up through the holes and all over our brand new furniture, which will be the next subject. And of course, my wife's coming down the steps and sees fire flying all over the room. I mean, it wasn't quite literally fire, but it certainly would have anybody worried, especially when you see it landing on your brand new furniture. And first thing she does is try to turn the heater off, and then is going around and putting out all the tissue paper that was burning and patting it out to make it stop, and of course had to clean up the mess. Um, and just to let you know, one more of my children's favorite things. Well, now I'm going to have two more. My son always seemed to be kind of in the middle of these things, and it was kind of strange. Um, he was always, he seemed to, after he would go play outside, he'd come in and he would have some dirt around his mouth, and never did or didn't figure out for the longest time what was going on. But one day he's standing on the register watching the TV, and he's going, "My God," and my wife is coming down the steps and is thinking, what the hell? Anyway, the boy would stuff a bunch of worms in his pocket, and then he would suck on them. And so, anyway, from then on, she would watch him a little closer about that. The last thing they would do, and this was all three of them, one day, the canisters that held the flour and the sugar were right there on the end of the counter. And my son pushed a chair over there, and there was a scoop inside of one of them, and he got them both open. And he starts scooping in the flour and flicking it up in the air, and then he'd scoop sugar, he'd flick that up in the air. And the girls are standing there, "Joe, what are you doing? Stop that," and while he's doing that, they're there on the floor just sweeping it up on little piles. Not hollering for mommy or getting Joe to stop. No, they're laughing, carrying on, which I thought it was, when I heard about it, I thought it was really funny, but she was not happy, of course. Anyway, when she came down the steps and looked into the kitchen, she yells, "Joe." His back is to her, and when he turns around, she says all you could see were his eyes because his whole face was covered with flour. Quite a comical sight, and something to wish we would have had a picture of. Couldn't save the flour or the sugar either because they were mixed together, so it just all got thrown out. Not that most people would want to eat it off the floor, but I'm not the type that would worry. I wouldn't have cared. So, oh, I'll tell you this one too. Even though Sarah always had the bruises, Jennifer was the one who seemed to get hurt the most. One time my wife had made hot chocolate, I guess it was, for the children. And instead of having Jennifer up in her chair and things like that, she had the cup sitting there on the table, and Jennifer decides she wants it. Well, it hasn't cooled off at all, and when she grabbed a hold of it, she spilled it down on her and gave her, I don't know, second-degree burn. Well, her skin blistered, and I can remember having to run up from the shop and get her and take her to the doctor. Not anything major, but, Sarah, she gets dumped into the hamper at the top of the steps, and then Jennifer pushes her down the steps, and she comes out with just a bruise or two, But Jennifer, no, she's got to get herself hurt a little bit more. So now the furniture. This new furniture came about, I had I had tried to do the right thing when I wanted to buy a bandsaw for my shop, and I tried to talk to my wife about it. Of course, she didn't see any reason for it. She didn't want to spend the money at all. So ultimately, I had to make a decision to do it regardless of what she thought. But the fact is she didn't ever spend any time down the shop, never really cared what was going on there. So part of the after I bought that, I and something happened where she was talking about her secondhand furniture in the house. I kind of realized that, like me wanting good equipment in my shop, the house is like her shop, and she wants to have good equipment. You want a nice place to sit your ass down and entertain people. You want a nice place to sit to eat a dinner with a large group of guests and things like that. And of course, who wouldn't want a nice bed to sleep in? Because we didn't have a nice bed, that's for sure. So I did what I never had the money for, as I figured if I borrowed it, I would then find a way to pay it back. And so I borrowed, I think it was like $4,000, and got new living room, new dining room, and new bedroom furniture for us, and made a world of difference in the house. But here again, the idea that I was thinking about her didn't mean much at all. In fact, I think she thought I bought it for me, um, which was, far from the truth. So I I then wondered what it was going to take to get to make her happy, you might say. And I'm going to say at this point, because of my Christian beliefs, I'm not going to leave her. I'm, you might say, in it for the long haul. And so I'm going to keep trying, sort of. And I say sort of because I'm spending more time at the shop. I'm pretty much drinking every day, but Sundays. Um, I'm getting involved with the church a fair amount. I'm still going to church, Sunday school and church with the children, but she's not. I did rent that limousine, and I think that was like our 9th anniversary. And in fact, when I rented that, um, it was a total surprise. I actually went out and with her the week before, the Sunday before, and um, bought her a dress and allowed her to buy a dress. I know I said I allowed her to. I kind of chose to buy the one dress myself because I wasn't happy with her tastes. The other one I left her choosing her own, which I didn't like it. It really didn't look good to me at all. Um, it showed cleavage, and it was a floral dress, a dark print or something, and just didn't make her look good at all, really. Um, and I did surprise her with the limousine, and I actually got dressed down at my shop and had the limousine pick me up there. And then I had told her to have the children ready to go, and I would be home, and then we would go out. And then at the last minute, I called her and said I was running late. Have everything ready, and when I come in, I'm just going to fly in, change my clothes, and come out. Well, I already had my clothes. So I went and changed them, took a shower, and changed them over at my parents' house. And then the limousine picked me up, and then I pulled up in the limousine, and the guy, of course, opens the door and lets me out, and my kids are looking through the window and all this stuff. So it was a pretty big surprise. And of course, there was a bottle of champagne in there, and I had opened it up, and um, come to find out, my one daughter, Sarah, she must be a lush, because by the time we got to Westminster, which was only 15 minutes away, and by the time we left our children off at her sister's house to be watched tonight, um, she was drunk. We didn't realize it till the next day. Then her sister figured out that she had drank most of that champagne, drank everybody's. So she had fun. And then we had picked up my friends. Well, actually, the lady, she loved talking to her, so I knew they would get along. And the other guy that went with us, he was like an artist and all. They took us down to Hauser's, and I'd never been there, and it was a restaurant that was full of art, and I mean from, you know, big name artists, not cheap shit. And so that was very interesting, and so we had a pretty good evening. But of course, like I said, she then accused me of bringing them along because I couldn't have fun with her, which was kind of true. But what else was I supposed to do? And then just to finish things up, that year I also bought her a microphone for her to encourage her to keep singing, and she had taken some voice lessons. And then I also made her this copper box with a copper bow on it, but I didn't make it till the Christmas Eve because I couldn't figure out how to do it until then. So she accused me of, thinking about her at the last minute just to bail my ass out, but that wasn't the truth. I had been thinking about it for at least 2 months. And then in January, it was her 30th birthday, so I actually, you might say, rented space at a restaurant and invited some people and paid for a lot of the food. I didn't pay for everything. I asked people to pay for their entree, and I would pay for everything else, appetizers, um, and drinks. So that's how and of course I had the appetizers pre-planned with the restaurant. But none of that was appreciated and forgotten really quickly. And of course, then I do things that help to forget things quickly. Like, I found out that the only way I was going to get a decent meal was to let her know that I was bringing a friend home. So if somebody was working at the shop, I'd invite them home for lunch. If they were around in the evening, I'd tell her that they were coming home, and so then she would fix something. I wouldn't have to ask her to, because she'd want to make an impression. That's all she was after, was worrying about what other people thought of her. But then for me, I might forget to come home and go out drinking with the person, every once in a while. I mean, you knew it was going to happen, you might say every 2-3 months at least. And of course, I was going down to the shop every night, and every night I drank when I was at the shop. That was a given. So I think we'll just let it go right there, and pick it up, I think, when we're moving to their next rental. So, talk to you later.